It's 9 at night. You're in an emergency room waiting room. You checked in 3 hours ago, and here's the strange part. The room around you is half empty. Plenty of open chairs. Through the doors, it looks calm. No sirens, no chaos. So why are you still sitting here? This is one of the most counterintuitive things in all of healthcare operations. The waiting room being empty is not a sign that there's room. It's a sign that the real room is full. Start with how bad it can get. In Connecticut, in 2024, one patient spent 52 hours, more than 2 days, waiting in an emergency room hallway. She wasn't alone. Another was one of 40 people, all waiting for a hospital bed at the same time. And here's the key part. These weren't people waiting to be seen. They'd been seen, examined, and admitted. They just had nowhere to go. The state was so alarmed, it passed a law forcing hospitals to publish their ER wait times. That's the extreme. But it starts with your ordinary 3-hour wait, and a number that makes it look like nothing's wrong. So let's answer it like an operator. Not why is the ER slow? Why do you wait hours in a department that looks half empty? The answer is a chain. You were seen fast, but being seen isn't being done. You're sorted by how sick you are, not when you arrived. And the beds that would actually treat you are full. Largely of the hospital's own overflow. Pull those apart, and the whole thing makes sense. Here's the number that starts the confusion. Nationally, the median wait to first be seen by a provider in the ER is about 16 minutes. 16. So you probably were seen quickly. A first look, some questions, maybe orders for blood work. And then you went back to the chairs. Because being seen is not being done. The visit that follows, tests, imaging, results, a decision, runs on a completely different clock. And that's the clock that ate your evening. And for a lot of people, that visit runs long. More than a third of all ER visits, over 1 in 3, take 4 hours or more, door to door. That's the whole thing. The exam, the tests, the treatment, and the waiting, all combined. About 1 in 20 stretch past 10 hours. So your 3-hour evening isn't unusual, and it isn't the whole story. The real question is what all that time is actually spent on. And to see that, you have to understand why the empty chairs are a trap. Because the waiting room isn't the emergency department, it's the overflow lot. The actual ER, the part that treats you, is a fixed number of staffed beds. And a staffed bed isn't just a bed. It's a bed with a nurse assigned to it and a doctor able to get to it. That's the real capacity. The chairs out front can hold 100 people. It doesn't matter. If every staffed bed already has someone in it, the line doesn't move, no matter how many empty seats you can see. The second thing is triage. Most ERs in the country run a 5-level system called the Emergency Severity Index. It does not sort you by when you arrived. It sorts you by how sick you are and how many resources you'll need. So the person who checked in at 2 o'clock with a sprained ankle usually waits behind the chest pain that arrived at 2:45. The empty chairs around you aren't proof the ER is idle. They're the people who, by the logic of triage, simply aren't next. So the beds are the bottleneck, and you're not first in line for them, which leaves the real question: what are all those beds actually doing? Push through the doors, and the answer is surprising. Many of the beds are occupied by patients who need care, but aren't getting the dramatic, visible kind right now. They're waiting too, just like you. Here's what a busy ER bed is often doing. Not the treatment you'd picture. One patient is mid-workup, blood sent to the lab, a scan ordered, and those can take hours to come back, especially when the whole department is slammed. Another has been seen and is simply waiting on results, and the worst one for flow is boarding. A patient who's already been admitted to the hospital, who needs a room upstairs, but there's no bed free. So they stay in the ER bed, still under care, just in the wrong place. Sometimes for a full day. A patient in the bed isn't the same as an open bed. And boarding is tied to how full the hospital is. In one 2022 study, once a hospital's beds passed about 85% occupancy, the median time an admitted patient spent stuck in the ER jumped past 6.5 hours, which means a big part of your wait in the chairs has less to do with your sprained ankle than with something you can't see from the waiting room, whether there's an open bed on the 4th floor. An ER physician in Connecticut put a number on it. On a bad night, he said, 50, 60, 70% of the emergency department is occupied by patients waiting for beds upstairs. So more than half the department can be full of people who no longer need emergency care specifically. They need an inpatient bed that doesn't exist yet. That's why the waiting room doesn't move. The beds are held by the hospital's overflow. Now the part that surprises even hospital leaders. As an ER's own beds fill up, the wait doesn't rise in a straight line, it curves. This is just the math of any queue, a checkout line, a highway on-ramp. In a simple model, when your beds are 70% full, the wait sits near its baseline. At 85%, it's several times that baseline. Push toward 95, and it's around 20 times the baseline. And to be clear, those aren't measured minutes. It's the shape of the math. The closer a system runs to full, the more each new patient costs everyone behind them. And because ERs fill up every evening, when everyone's off work and walks in at once, they spend their nights riding the steep part of that curve. And here's the human cost. Some people just give up and leave before they're ever seen. Nationally, that's about 1 in 50. But the rate nearly doubled between 2017 and 2021, and at the most crowded hospitals, it reaches 1 in 10. 1 in 10 people, worried enough to come to an emergency room, walking back out without care. The ER is the one place required by law to at least screen anyone who comes in. A wait long enough to drive people away quietly chips at that. And it's changing how people feel about the ER. In a 2023 poll, 43% of American adults said they would delay or avoid going to an emergency room at all, specifically because they're afraid of getting stuck there for hours. Sit with that. The emergency room, the one place legally required to screen anyone who walks in, is now a place a lot of people say they're scared to go. So can any of this be fixed? Here's the honest answer. There are really two problems, and they need two different fixes. The front-end problem, how fast you get seen, whether the minor cases clog the line. That one the ER can fix on its own without a single new bed. But the boarding problem, the beds full of admitted patients with nowhere to go, that one the ER can't fix alone. That takes the whole hospital. Start with the front end because the wins there are real. Most ERs put a triage nurse up front and the doctors in the back. Put an actual provider, a physician or a PA, right at triage, and two things happen. People get seen faster, and more importantly, the real clock starts sooner. Your tests and imaging get ordered the moment you arrive, instead of after an hour in a chair. One medical center cut its time to a provider from 47 minutes to 7. Same building, no new beds, just a smarter front door. Stack those front-end fixes up, and they conjure real capacity out of thin air. Put a provider at triage, and the share of patients who give up and leave can fall from 5% to 1%. Fast-track the sprained ankles so they don't sit behind the chest pains. Give the results-waiting patients a recliner instead of a full bed. None of that is new construction, but here's the honest part. None of it clears a single boarding patient. The admitted patient waiting for a room upstairs is still waiting. That fix lives in the rest of the hospital, emptying beds faster, smoothing the surgery schedule, opening the exit, which is exactly the problem we started with. So put it together. You wait in an empty-looking room because you're sorted by how sick you are, not when you arrived. Because the beds behind the doors are full of people getting tests or waiting for a room upstairs. Because everyone shows up in the same few evening hours against a fixed number of beds. And because a system running at the edge turns a small surge into a long wait. The empty chair next to you is real. The bed that would actually treat you, and the nurse to run it. That's the part you can't see, and it's already taken. And it's worth being fair about whose fault this is. As one Yale researcher put it, this is not an emergency department management issue. The long wait is a symptom of a hospital that's too full upstairs, of a system with no slack anywhere in it. Your ER isn't slow because the people in it are lazy. It's slow because it's the pressure valve for everything else that's backed up. If you want the operator's view of how healthcare actually runs, the systems behind the headlines in plain English. The breakdowns are at shanewelter.com/free. Next question in this series. There's a nationwide nurse shortage. So why, when nursing pays well and every hospital says it's desperate to hire, are the jobs still going unfilled? The answer isn't what you'd guess.